What's going on, Murph?
Why did you and Mom name me after something that's bad?
Oh, we didn't.
Murphy's Law.
Well, Murphy's Law doesn't mean that something bad will happen. What it means is that whatever can happen will happen, and that sounded just fine with us.
So, Parth, what have you been eating?
Monsieur Trent. It's good to see you. Nice to see that you're alive and well.
Please speak to me in the Usted form only, please.
To answer your question, I most recently had Buffalo Wild Wings.
Whoa, B-dubs for short. What inspired that? In terms of things I know about you, this is the most out of character piece of information you've ever brought forth. I mean, not to say that you don't like chicken, but I don't know. That's just like a sports bar. Did you go and eat there, or did you just hit and run?
No. We got takeout. My cousins from Connecticut came over, and we decided we're gonna treat ourselves to some food. Some high class establishment.
Do you feel gluttonous?
A little bit. Well, these are leftovers from yesterday.
I remember one time when I was 14, I went to Buffalo Wild Wings with my dad, and I guess trying to prove something to myself and probably to him, I got one of the hotter sauces.
A big mistake.
A big mistake, not knowing what I was getting myself into, and I remember crying. It was very unpleasant, and I had to be sent back. It was inedible.
Thankfully, we did not have that experience.
Yeah, you weren't trying to prove a point.
No. Well, you see, Trent, it's not about the money. It's about sending a message.
Nice. Believe it or not, I once had a birthday dinner at Buffalo Wild Wings. For many years, we would have it at Applebee's, and then we took a step up formally into Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, I would say that's a step up.
And then I graduated from middle school, and now we go to Outback Steakhouse.
Oh, so you haven't had any growth. So what did you have most recently?
I had a Jersey Mike's sandwich, and then to balance myself out, because now as an adult, I can't just eat junk food. I need to eat something healthy immediately after.
Yeah, Trent's a 20-year-old man now. He's not a 19-year-old little boy.
And I have...
he was when he started this podcast.
And I have the digestive issues of an old man.
Of a middle-aged father.
And so I ate some grapes to find an equilibrium.
What color were they?
Purple, but I'm red? What are they called? But I'm usually a green grape guy.
That's understandable. That's fair.
Well, you wanna start the episode?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm starting to feel a little spaced out after all of this food conversation. And hey, space!
Oh,
yeah, I did it, didn't I?
We have a movie podcast.
And we're talking about Interstellar. Cut to the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week, who do we have, Trent?
John Lee, assistant editor.
Of what film, Trent?
Interstellar, a movie I've not seen, but one that Parth likes a lot, yeah?
Yeah, and I think we had a pretty good conversation, didn't we?
Yeah, wait. He was super nice. He was really charming and handsome, and he had a really cool Australian accent that I think the listeners' ears will really enjoy.
Yeah, he was a really, really nice guy. We really enjoyed talking with him. Fun fact, he follows me on Twitter, and sometimes he likes and even replies to some of my tweets.
Okay, that's awesome. Parth and John are friends, I guess.
I think the kids say
associates.
Besties.
Oh, all right, Parth. I think you're being a little overbearing. And John, if you're listening, thanks for tuning in. And this is,
I'm not going to help you with that.
I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's staying in the edit.
No.
That's staying in the edit.
Parth.
Yeah, I have complete control over this episode. And all of Trent's mishaps, because he's such an unprepared little shit. Yeah, that stays in.
All right. Well, I'm excited to watch this film because we'll be discussing it next week. I'll have to. Because Parth just loves Christopher Nolan.
I do.
And Parth in his grubby little hands selects whatever films he wants for the pod.
My hands are grubby.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can cut to that.
Yeah, I think we can cut to the interview. Is there anything you want to say about this interview?
Yeah, we got some good stories, right? I think about celebrities.
We've got we'll get to that, but I mean, among all of the Nolan Interstellar talk, you also get to hear how The Truman Show was re-edited.
Yeah, that was interesting. Also about his work on Inception.
Yeah, you get to hear how he had his way with the movie for about 4 months, and then
he had it in the palm of his hand.
On top of that, maybe you'll just hear about, a little story about a Parth Marathe favorite in terms of celebrities.
Tom Cruise.
I'm going to edit that out.
It's a Tom Cruise anecdote.
All right. That's not good. Okay. Well, I was trying to give some mystery and alert. All right. Cue the intro. I mean, fuck. Not that. We already did that.
The interview sound effect. The film through the film projector thing.
All right. Yeah. Cut to the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with John Lee. He has worked on such projects as Mission Impossible 2, The Matrix, The Dark Knight, and our film for today, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So just to start off, what would you say your relationship with film was at a young age?
Well, I do remember finding out, somebody told me when I was really young, hey, they shoot most movies with one camera. And that was blew my mind at the time because when you look at a movie, it seems to be all happening at once and it's like a complete thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, how do they do that? And then I became quite interested in that whole idea. How do they make them?
So how did you find yourself editing anything professionally or unprofessionally for the first time?
Well, I went to art school because I thought I wanted to paint or draw or something like that. But they had a film and video thing. So for 2 years, I kind of stumbled around, not really knowing what I was doing. And then in my third year, I found they had film and video production. And I just loved that. They had some 16 mil cameras and editing equipment. And so, we shot little short films and stuff like that and just watched a lot of, stayed up all night watching French New Wave movies like you do. So it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I thought, this is what I want to do. But then it took me a while to get into editing. So I did some editing then, but it took me a while to come back to it because I kind of got a job in TV as a stagehand for a couple of years and an assistant floor manager. And then I was an electrician for a while on set. And kind of all of those experiences actually helped with being an editorial, I find, because you kind of, what the camera department's going through because you've been on set and you've seen. I just remember being in the cutting room once and they're like, oh, why didn't those guys give us a slate? We can't sync this thing up. Why didn't they give us a slate? And I'm like, well, because the camera's on a 50-foot crane and it's over a cliff and, they couldn't get a slate in there. So just deal with it, So, it took me a while. A friend of mine who was an assistant director actually got a job as an assistant editor on Peter Weir's film Fearless. And they needed a PA. And I was 30 years old at the time. They said, look, we just need someone young to come and get lunch for people. So I said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. So, that was really, really fantastic experience. So, they didn't pay me for a while and then they paid me a couple of $100 to get lunch for people, but they taught me how to be an assistant editor as well. So I learned, how to file trims. It was in the film days. So I learned how to file trims and everything and just learned as much as I could. I got a whole lot of editing books and I read up about it and I was a smart ass, I'd come in and tell people how they should be doing things and they're like, hey, we've been doing this forever and you just got here. But, I was just very interested in it. And then I ended up on Rapa Nui, which was a moviola show. So I had to learn how to do that. They were English editors, so they have a different system than the American. This is all in Australia, by the way. They have a different system. The English system is different. than the American system.
Is it still different, or has that changed over time?
I think it's changed. You know, the American slating system, they do the scene numbers. You know, 1, 2, 3 is scene 123, and then the next thing is 123A and 123B. The English and Australian system, like the first shot is 1 and the second shot is 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the only good thing about that is everyone can bet on what's the highest number we're going to get to on this film. You know, generally people put $5 in and say, I think we're going to get to, 1,026 or something. But the American system I find is better for certainly in editorial, because you can look at the slate and know where it kind of goes in general.
Was the physical process of like cutting and taping film what attracted you to the editing department, and how have your feelings changed with the invent of digital editing?
Yeah, I liked all of that. It seems so archaic now, but I mean, certainly on Chris Nolan's films, we still do it. So we still do all of that stuff that I was doing back then. So it hasn't really gone away for me. But when other people see it, if they happen to walk past our room and they look in, they're like, holy hell, what are you guys doing? Because it looks like we're working in a museum. You know, we've got flatbeds and benches and people are winding film and taping it with sticky tape, basically. But yeah, the tactile, all of that was fun. You know, as an assistant, you'd be rewinding film and filing trims and trying to find that one frame that nobody could find. Because, I mean, in those days, the editor, you always had to carry a notebook and you had to be really organized, because the editor would call you in to his room and he'd say, I need the 2-frame tail trim of 0083. He'd give you a whole bunch of numbers and he needs those actual frames before he can continue any further. And you'd run out of the room and you knew where that was and you'd bring it back to him and say, here it is, if it was 2 frames or 3 frames or a roll or whatever. So if you ever went in without your notebook, that was a mistake, because you can't remember whatever numbers. He might throw a whole lot of numbers at you. So you had to be really organized and be able to find things very quickly. So it's kind of a different skill set. But some of it carries on to this, to the digital age. You still have to be very organized the way you set up a project and everything.
So sort of pivoting into our main topic of the day, you've started, I believe, working with on Chris Nolan's movies with Batman Begins and have since worked on every single one of his movies. And we were wondering, how did you come to start that relationship?
Well, I work with Lee Smith, or I have done. Lee Smith is Chris's editor, or has been since Batman Begins. So I've done a lot of films with Lee before then. We did Master and Commander. We did a whole lot of little Australian films. I think after Master and Commander, Chris saw that film and was really impressed with it, and he wanted Lee to do Batman Begins. So, and I go everywhere Lee goes. He used to put me into his contract. It's just a comfort thing. If you go into another country and you've got to edit something, it's stressful. So if you have the people that you're used to around you, so he would put me in his contract and say, look, that's a deal breaker. He's coming with me. And so they said, yeah, that's great. So I ended up on Batman Begins, and then we went from film to film. We did other things in between. Chris kind of does a film every 2 years. So, but Tenet, Lee wasn't available. But by then, I think Chris's whole process is so complicated with IMAX and 70mm. Like nobody does that, or hardly anybody. I mean, Quentin Tarantino has shot in 70mm. Paul Thomas Anderson, but it's not
common.
It's not common. It's like a cottage industry kind of thing now. It used to be common in the 70s or something. But so, I know how to do it, and the team that we've put together knows how to do it. So when Lee wasn't available, he called me and said, you've got to do Tenet. We'll get another editor, whatever. So that's what we did. And that was fun.
So can you explain the general responsibilities of the associate and/or assistant editors compared to the editor themselves? Yeah,
I mean, Lee, on Interstellar, for example, he's editing the film, and I basically take everything that could bother him away from him. So all of Chris's films, like not to just talk of Interstellar, they all have something crazy about them, which is kind of the challenge. I mean, Prestige was almost the most normal film that we did, but everything else, it's like, hey, time's going to go backwards and forwards, or we're going to shoot it in 70mm, but IMAX, but we're going to run the cameras backwards, or, we're going to shoot VistaVision, we're going to shoot Phantom camera. There's always something crazy, and it falls on me to figure out how we're going to do that and how we're going to integrate it in there. And also because we follow a film post-production pathline where we cut the negative and everything, like in the old days, because Chris, is a firm believer in film and in future-proofing things. Like, his thing is that if you wanted, you could go to the vaults at Warner Brothers and get the cut negative of Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, you could make a 4K or an 8K or whatever in the future is going to be the standard. If you have a cut negative, that's going to be the best quality you can get. And probably Casablanca, I might be controversial here, but Casablanca is probably going to look better, in 20 years than Star Wars, like the fourth Star Wars or the first one, whichever way you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, there was all this new digital technology and everything.
Right,
and it was all
the special editions.
Yeah, but is that the best picture quality that you can possibly get? Like a 2K DI, is that probably not. So you'll end up, Casablanca might look better than Star Wars, for example. Is that controversial? Am I going to get in trouble? Probably.
I believe George Lucas is outside your house with a sniper rifle.
Yeah, he's on the phone.
Exactly.
His lawyers will be contacting your lawyers.
Yeah, so sort of speaking on the medium, I mean, I believe Interstellar was 35mm, 70mm in IMAX. And if you could just explain what your the literal process of working with these film negatives is, like what do you do when you get that footage?
I think Interstellar was mainly 35mm and then IMAX for quite a few sequences. I think probably almost half the film, maybe not that much, on Interstellar was IMAX and the rest was 35mm. Certainly the later films, we shot a lot more IMAX on Dunkirk, for example, because there was not much dialogue in it. So that's another thing about IMAX. They're very loud cameras. So a film like Interstellar, you want to do IMAX because it's got to be that event kind of film where you've got this black hole and these spaceships and the magnificence of space. But you've also got people talking in tiny little spaceships, and you can't have this camera that sounds like a blender in there with them.
Right.
And Chris doesn't like to do ADR, which I tend to agree with. Like if you can avoid doing ADR, the actors' performances on the day are always better. So what would happen is we would shoot 35mm for everything that involved dialogue, like as a rule. And then all the huge things we could do with IMAX. So you would have that dust storm sequence. I mean, there's not a lot of dialogue in there. There's people yelling and whatnot, but you could do that with IMAX. And Hoyter was very good at hand-holding the camera, which is crazy because those things, if you've seen them, they're really heavy. And they make a cut-down version for him, but it's massive, and he hand-holds that thing. He's done it on the last couple of films. It's kind of amazing.
So Interstellar is very VFX heavy, and we were wondering on films that you're editing with a lot of visual effects, how does that change your approach since you don't have the finished version in front of you, essentially?
Well, actually, it was visual effects heavy in terms of a Chris Nolan film, but in terms of a regular movie, none of his films are really visual effect heavy, I would say. Like, it's not like a Marvel movie. It's not like an Avengers movie, or, I'm working on Black Adam at the moment. It's not like that.
Yeah, I believe it only had like 700 VFX shots in Interstellar.
Yeah. And the other films have had less than that because, Chris's philosophy is try and shoot it for real as much as possible. And you probably heard Interstellar, like inside the cockpit of those spaceships, other filmmakers would say, well, let's just build a set. And we'll build it out of wood or something, and we'll put the actors in it. And we'll have a blue screen out there, and we can put whatever stars we want later. But Chris didn't do that. He had huge projectors out there, and they were projecting the stars. So, we went and visited that set. You have to climb up ladders, and it takes a long time. You get up into this thing, and it's on a gimbal and everything, so it moves. And you look out the window, and you think you're in space. It's kind of amazing. And so for the actors, I mean, actors are great. They can do what they can pretend they're anywhere. But these guys, they probably were acting and thinking they were in space. It just looked so amazing. So there were places where we would have had visual effects if someone else had been making the movie like that. They would have had a blue screen out there, and we would have had to replace all of that. But there were obviously visual effects, like DNEG worked with Kip Thorne to make what does a black hole look like. Mm-hmm. And of course, being Chris Nolan, it's not like, hey, let's just make up what we think a black hole would look like. It's like, let's get this astrophysicist to tell us what actually a black hole will actually look like, and then have a visual effects company build it. And so that was kind of amazing to have an astrophysicist kind of like, all of this stuff's impossible, but if it was possible, this is how it would be.
So you've spoken a little bit about the tools that you use, but if you could sort of go in specific about both on Interstellar and just on general movies, because it seems like Chris Nolan movies are a little bit different from other movies. But if you could go into a little bit of depth about like the tools that you use and work with to edit.
Yeah, well, we cut on Avid, and, you know, what happens is we shoot on film and we have to finish on film, but it would be crazy to cut on film, you know. So people did it, of course, and we did it. It just takes a long time. And obviously, if you have a visual effect, you don't actually have that on film yet. So there is a moment where you're cutting in the Avid, you can have a quick time of the visual effect in there. So that's what we do. We work in the Avid and we cut to a shot that, hey, this has to have a black hole in the background. And we give that quick time to the visual effects company and say, put the black hole in the background, and they'll do something rough and send it back to us, and we drop it in. So now we can play the film on the Avid and it looks okay. It makes sense, because if this thing's not there, it doesn't make sense. And then we just keep making them better. And then obviously at a certain point, they need to get the film elements of that, and they need to make the visual effect properly. Of course, we have the added issue of, if it's a IMAX sequence, they have to make the visual, they have to scan in 8K, and they have to do a visual effect that is good enough for an IMAX film, but also then we have to make another version for 35mm, because on these films we do two negative cuts. One's a 15 perf negative cut and one's a 35mm negative cut. So they have to deliver the visual effects twice, which is not as crazy as it sounds, because they'll do one that's in like the 4:3 aspect ratio, and then they just take that and they crop the top,
scale it down.
Yeah, scale it. Yeah, you're going to lose some sky and the bottom area, but you're not losing any important action.
I wanted to ask about on like the digital copies of like the movies he's worked with on IMAX. The black bars are still there. It doesn't switch the aspect ratio. So I was wondering, but on the Blu-ray it does. So I was wondering, do you have to like go through and manually just like move all of the shots to make sure that they, I guess for that 35mm edit of it?
Actually, good question. Yeah, for the Blu-rays, we do a version that pops in and out of the correct aspect ratio. So it kind of gives that IMAX experience. We found working on the Avid, it's best to just not worry about that. And it's best to just cut the movie to tell the story. And so, like, we tell a cine the IMAX so that it's full frame. And we tell a cine the 35mm so that it's full frame. But the two aspect ratios don't match. But we don't worry about that when we're working, because to do that, you know, when you're just changing things every 2 seconds, it would take a team of people following behind to make it all look how it's going to look in an IMAX theater, which doesn't make any sense because you're looking on a TV monitor. When you look at this effect of the aspect ratio going bigger and smaller on a TV monitor, because it's very small and it's in front of your face, you kind of go, oh, that's not going to work. This is going to be really distracting. And then when you go to an IMAX theater, you don't actually notice it's happening. It's more of a feeling. You like, you really have to, because you have to lift your head up and stare at the top of the room to see that it's happening. So it's more of a feeling. You cut to this, you know, the expanse of space or the expanse of the wheat fields with the drone flying around. And you get this feeling. It's more of a feeling than, oh, they've gone to IMAX here.
I was wondering how thorough the direction you receive is, and whether that's coming from the lead editor or if you're in direct contact with the director, and if you're collaborating with the other editors at all.
Well, on Chris's films, he just has one editor. He has Lee, and Jen did Tenet. What happens is when they're shooting, we're cutting, and then... Oh, that's another thing that Chris doesn't like. Chris has all these ideas that other filmmakers, don't bother with or whatever. And I kind of think a lot of them are correct, but other people might think they're crazy. Like there's this thing where when you make a movie and you do an editor's cut, and then when the director comes in, he's spent 6 months shooting a movie and he's been so busy and so tired, obviously, they generally have a week off. And that's when you get the editor's cut ready. And I've been to a ton of these where the director comes in and goes, okay, show me what you got. And you play a 2.5 hour movie or a 3 hour movie, because generally it's too long, and it's going to be terrible. I mean, it's not actually terrible, but it's going to be terrible for him or her, because in their head, they've been thinking, this is what I'm making, but they haven't seen any of it. And now they're seeing it, and it's not at all what they thought. So generally, I've been to some of those screenings, I won't name any names, where the director's walked out, looked like he's going to faint. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, that is the worst thing I've ever seen. Let's start work. So what Chris does is he doesn't have an editor's cut screening. He just comes in and says, let's start at scene 1 or scene 96 or whatever it is that we have to start with. And he'll look at scene 1, play me scene 1, and Lee will play him scene 1, and he'll say, yeah, pretty good, but here's what we're going to do. And then they start working on it. And then they work on scene 2, and et cetera. And so he hasn't had to put himself through this terrible ordeal of watching something that, he's not going to like it, because it's not going to be what he imagined. It doesn't matter how much of a genius editor you are. It's not going to be what he wanted. Mm-hmm. That's sad, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to Interstellar a little bit, and then also just broader into the rest of his filmography, they're pretty script heavy, or there's a big reliance on script. And I was wondering, is there any point in Interstellar or in any other of the movies that you've worked on that you can talk about where you've seen things sort of structurally move in the editing process? I think Interstellar is probably one of his more linear movies, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. Well, Lee wasn't available on Inception, for example, so I edited that for 4 months until he was available, and then he took over. So, and people said, "Oh my God, how did you edit on Inception? That's so confusing, that movie." And it's like, well, it actually isn't. Just like you say, it's scripted. These scenes happen in this order because it's in Chris's brain. He wrote it that way. And so what I thought is, when scene 96 comes in, cut scene 96, and then when scene 97 comes in, cut that and join it together and see if it works, kind of thing. But to your point, what happened with like Inception, for example, is yes, things would have to move. Like I remember the ski sequence in Inception, because I think Chris is a fan of James Bond films. That ski sequence in Inception is so cool. It was really long and really involved. And in the end, it's too heavy for the movie. Like there's too much of it. So it came down, and then things moved, but not a lot. Mm-hmm. I've been on films where like The Truman Show, for example, by Peter Weir.
Great movie.
It's a great movie, but that was fun to be in the editing room, and I was like an assistant editor on that, just to see what happened with The Truman Show. Is that if you've ever got the original script of that, it's set in New York, and you only find out that the main character is in kind of this 24/7 kind of Big Brother type TV show, like 45 minutes into the movie. And it's amazing. Like when you read the script, it blows your mind. But Peter found that what's going to happen with word of mouth is people are going to say, hey, have you seen The Truman Show? Yeah, what's it about? Oh, it's about this guy that's in a TV show and he doesn't know it. So you've got a spoiler right there. And so you can't have the audience sit there for 45 minutes before it happens. So we ended up making that happen in the first scene. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. And I remember everyone thinking, Lee was one of the editors on that too.
So wait, so it was shot as though it would happen 45 minutes in, and then that was a change in editing?
Yeah, it was. We had, the guy, they changed it from New York to Florida, or, that seaside kind of place with the pink houses, the weird looking place, because they realized we have to make it smaller. But I mean, when you think about it, New York is crazy. Imagine having a TV show where you had tens of thousands of people in on it. you could probably get away with actually doing that if you could pull it off, because they'd be living in an area where, maybe they didn't have to travel anywhere, whatever. But they decided, well, let's make it smaller. We'll make it a little town that we can deal with. But they moved like the ending to the beginning. And we would go to a screening and go, oh, well, that's how it is now, I think the first shot is Christoph, the Ed Harris character, kind of saying, hey, Truman, and immediately. And then it's just following the adventure.
So you touched on this a little bit. So when you're editing scene 96, are you thinking about the methods in which you use to edit scene 95? And are you trying to form any sort of continuous style in your cuts, or is it more like there's a right and a wrong way to edit?
I think the first thing is to just cut the scene how it is. Because the thing is, it's no good agonizing about how should I start this scene or whatever. If you don't have the other scenes, just cut it. It's fine. You haven't broken anything. You can change it later. When the other scene comes in, you kind of have to remember things like, oh, why am I spending a lot of time on wide shots of this house, for example, when the rest of the movie's set in this house? Like, we know the house by now. So, things like that you have to think about. I can get away with being in tighter here because we already know where we are and who the people are.
Moving a little bit away from Interstellar, but not too far away from Chris Nolan, you've worked on all three of the Dark Knight movies, and we were wondering what those were like, and especially specifically with the Dark Knight, I believe that was the first narrative feature film to use IMAX. So if you could speak anything on that.
Yeah, that was the first narrative that used IMAX. I think we had about 30 minutes of IMAX. It was certain sequences that we had planned. Originally, we planned the bank heist at the beginning, and they decided to do a prologue, which was the bank heist. Right. I don't know if you remember that. And it came out like 6 months before the movie. Mm-hmm. And he's done that with all of his films since then. And it's kind of fun because...
I think we were like 6 when that prologue came out.
Oh, okay, cool. So you weren't allowed to see it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. But it was a crazy time because people came dressed as the Joker. I remember we went to tech check the theater, and there was lines around the block of people dressed like freaks. Mm-hmm. And it was like, holy hell, what is happening here? But yeah, they were fun films. We shot Batman Begins in England mostly. So we were in London, which is crazy because it's supposed to look like Gotham City. But there we were at Shepperton Studios and everything. So we were there for 14 months on that. Went to Chicago for 3 weeks. And then Dark Knight we shot in Hong Kong and London again and Chicago. So, there's always some location work on these movies. But after Batman Begins, we'd always come back to LA for post-production. So, for sanity, I've quite enjoyed that. You get to go somewhere fun, like on Tenet, we got to go to Estonia, Italy, and London, and then come back to LA. Is
that common to move where the project is going? Are you like just continuously editing as they're shooting?
It depends what the budget is and what the director wants. People work differently all the time. Some people are into, Pix or one of those systems where the editor can be working anywhere. It's just, I'll send me a cut every now and then and I'll look at it on my iPad type thing. Mm-hmm. Chris isn't one of those guys. Chris will always want us to be there, and we will travel, and he'll want to have dailies, and he'll want to have dailies on film. And, back to that, that's what I do is I figure out how can we have dailies in Estonia in 70 millimeter. And it's not like, oh, I'll call the 70 millimeter theater in Tallinn, because there isn't one. Nobody's doing this. So, and the more the years go by, less and less people are doing it. But after a while, we kind of know people. And, I'll call someone in London and say, hey, do you want to get your 70 mil projector and take it to Tallinn? And so we'll build a theater somewhere. And Chris likes us to be sitting next to him when we have dailies, and he'll tell us things. And then you'll know. You just know, if you're there, you'll know stuff. Like a lot of productions these days don't have dailies anymore, which is depressing because, with things digital, they also shoot a lot more. So dailies would be like 6 hours anyway. So at the end of your day, no one's going to sit in a room for 6 hours. But what happens on a Nolan film is they shoot and we're working nearby, or sometimes like exactly nearby. Like we used to shoot in this air balloon hangar in Cardington in Bedfordshire. That's where all the sets were for The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And we built a cutting room right in there. So if we wanted to go to set, we would walk out the door and walk down the stairs and we'd be on the set. And so at night we would have dailies, and we could hear what trials and tribulations the crew had been through. And, every now and then Chris would lean over and say something about a performance or about an idea that he had. And that would save time for when you finally got that in the system and we had to cut it. Yeah, so dailies is good, and and if we had any problems, Chris would always want us to take him aside and say, "Hey, it'd be great to get a wide shot here, or can you get a close up of this?" And because you're right there, he could come and have a look and go, "Oh yeah, I'll do that tomorrow," or whatever, or "No, I don't think we need it," whatever the case may be. It's just very good to be there.
So you most recently worked on Tenet, which spends a lot of time in reverse. And does that create a like comically complicated editing situation, or is it ironically not as hard as it seems?
No, it's the first one you said.
Comically difficult, sure.
Comically difficult, yes. It was. So what normally happens on these films, I come on like months early because Chris will call me and say, "I've got this idea," and he'll tell me, and it's never, "Oh, we're going to shoot this romantic comedy and it's going to be these two people." It's always something crazy and complicated, and we want to run the cameras backwards in that case. So for me, technically, I have to figure out, oh, well, I talk to the camera department. Yes, they can turn the motor around, but now the key numbers on the film are going to be on the wrong side. So we're not going to be able to read the key numbers for what we do. So we have to come up with systems to get the information that we need, like the metadata, into the Avid, so that when we do a negative cut, even if the bit of film looks like it's upside down, it's actually the right way around. Like when we first started, they were shooting things, and the Telesini House, for example, just went, "Oh, this looks wrong," and they put it all the other way around. And we got the dailies back and went, "These look great. This looks weird." And then Hoyter came in and said, "Hey, that's going the wrong way." Jen and I got, when she was cutting that, we would often just sit there and play everything backwards to see what they actually did on set, and then we would play it forwards to realize what was happening. It was mind-boggling. But the good thing about it in Tenet was that we would shoot a film backwards and then we would shoot it forwards, or vice versa. Like the car chase happens twice from different points of view, and the fight in the vault. But, the actors, they got very good at it because they had to be able to walk and fight backwards. Sometimes the camera would be going forwards in the backwards scene and they would have to do it backwards. But then it would go backwards in the backward scene, they'd have to go forwards. So I don't know how everyone kept this straight on set. When they used to come in from dailies, their minds would be spinning. But they managed to keep it all together somehow with the script supervisor and everybody. But I know from what happened, they'd say, "Hey, we've got to shoot this thing." And they would all stop and have to talk, "Wait, are the bullet holes in the glass yet? Or is he not? Or is he unshot the glass? So we have to have the bullet holes and he unshoots them, or does he do that later and he actually shoots them? And then do we load the camera backwards or forwards?" And so they had different magazines for what they were going to do, and they would have to have this whole discussion before they figured out what they were doing. And then if there were 300 extras or whatever, they'd have to tell, "Oh, red soldiers, you're running backwards in this scene." Very complicated. Comically, what you said, comically complicated.
So, Tenet is a very trippy film, and another trippy film that you worked on is The Matrix, and I'm a huge fan of that movie. So anything you could say on that would be most welcome.
Oh yeah, The Matrix was fun. It was like I was like a second assistant on that. I was like conforming 35 mil, and so they shot it on film, and then it comes into the Avid. I was kind of an Avid assistant and a film assistant because there was a time where it was handy to be able to do both. And all of our screenings were on film, so we would conform the film. We get a list from the Avid, and then we cut the film and sticky tape it together and basically have screenings. So that was a lot of what I was doing on that. It was fun. We shot it in Sydney. It was certainly ahead of its time. Zach, the editor, won an Academy Award, which was amazing. The two directors were great. It was a fun and exciting time in Australia at that time, which is kind of how I got to where I am. Is it depended how the Australian dollar was, but sometimes American films would suddenly all head to Australia because, it made sense budget-wise. And, they did Superman and they did 3 Matrixes and Mission Impossible 2 and Red Planet. I mean, it was just a ton of big movies coming through.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Mission Impossible 2 as well, just because I'm famously a big Mission Impossible fan. If you remember much about that.
Yeah, Mission Impossible 2 was fun. Once again, I was an avid well, I was like the Australian first assistant. There was an American first assistant on it, and we had a film first assistant as well, because we were conforming and having dailies and everything. And it was fun as well. It was a big, crazy thing. John Woo was very clever, and I became friends with the armorer on the show, who was fun. There's a lot of just fun people, and Tom Cruise is very intense.
Oh, do you have a Tom Cruise story? Because I would love to hear it, if you could say it.
Well, he's just very. He always had like this entourage, and he always looked like he absolutely knew what he was doing.
He does. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't just look like it.
Yeah, it's like. It's kind of scary. He's just like walking like with a purpose everywhere. I kind of admire the dude. Mm-hmm. I do remember one time in dailies. I hope this is a good story. Yes, Tom Cruise. So the second unit had shot this the stunt double dangling from a helicopter above Sydney. It was an amazing shot, and Tom Cruise was up the back, and everyone was going, "Wow, this is amazing!" And Tom Cruise jumped up and said, "I look great. What do I do next?" As if that was him there. But I mean, I know he didn't think that was him. He knew it was a stunt guy, but he was so excited about the shot. So yeah, we all laughed. We thought that was funny. Yeah, he's a cool dude.
It seems like it. So when you're editing, I mean, credit to you and the films you've worked on, but a number of them have been considered like triumphs. And I'm wondering, during the editing process, are you desensitized to see the true quality of this movie since you're seeing them in unfinished form? Or when you see the dailies, are you like, shit, like I'm really in for something special?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I guess you never know how it's going to turn out. And the amount of work you have to do on a film is the same whether it's a bad film or a good film.
Right.
And when you're in the trenches just doing it, you're just doing whatever. But certainly, like, I treat every film I'm on like it's going to be the best film ever, because it's the only way to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And some of them that I've worked on, luckily, like you say, have turned out to possibly be the best film ever. Like, Master and Commander's pretty amazing movie, for example, and The Truman Show is amazing, and The Matrix is amazing. I've been lucky that I've worked on some really great movies, and and Interstellar is my favorite Nolan film, actually. The experience of working on it, working in Canada, it was like the most moving screenplay to me. Like, screenplays are often, because it's a technical document, really, they're often not. It's not like a novel. You're not going to start crying. But I did actually, I'm going to admit it, I actually wept when I first read Interstellar because of the father-daughter thing. My daughter was 9 at the time, and it just hit me. Like, I remember Chris called and said, we're doing this film. And of course, they never send you a script. It's always on red paper and no one can get a copy. And so I had to go into the office and sign my life away to read it. But I remember sitting in the office sobbing. And Chris said, what did you think? And I said, my God, I'm still crying. So he was pleased about that. But I actually think that Interstellar was the original script that his brother wrote. It was a father and a son. And then Spielberg was going to do it at one point. And then that didn't happen. So it went back to Paramount. And then Chris said, well, I'll do it. And he changed it to the daughter. And there's something just very moving about that. I mean, that film gets me every time. And the score by Hans Zimmer, like, you just have to listen to that. And it has the emotion in it, the organ and everything. And when she runs out after him, when he's driving down the street, and then it cuts to the rocket ship taking off, is just heart-wrenching. I went off on a tangent there, but what I'm saying is that was a film where working on it, I knew it was going to be amazing. But, there are things like Inception, for example. Like, I don't feel that film got the love that it should have got. Like,
Really?
Yeah, I mean, people love it, but also people don't like it. But like, it wasn't nominated for any editing awards, for example. Like, Lee wasn't nominated for anything. It's like, really, that is an editor's film. Like
Very
like
much
that.
So.
Yeah. I mean, he was nominated and won for Dunkirk, which is great as well. But yeah, I feel like Inception, when I was working on it, I thought this is a really special movie, and I don't know. To me, I still think it's great.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it again recently a couple of times, and it's very moving as well.
Well, speaking of great things, Trent, do you want to ask the big kahuna?
The big kahuna final question is, what is the last great film that you have watched? And it can be a first viewing or a revisit.
The last great film that I watched was Nobody. And I wish I'd seen it in a cinema, but still we're all pandemic-y. So, but I watched it. I watched it on TV. I watched it on a TV monitor, and I watched it twice. I watched it one night and then I watched it the next day because I just thought that is pretty amazing. I like those sort of films. Like, and then if I could just say, my favorite films to just like, if you're ever a bit depressed or something and you want like a pick me up, is like the Bourne the Bourne films. Yes. The first three of them, like they'll always pick you up.
Masterclass.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's take just while we're here, one more all-time suggestion, just for the listeners at home, just a little sprinkle final treat. What's your rainy day film?
A rainy day film. It's yeah. Well, a James Bond film would be good. I really love. I mean, I worked on one of them.
You worked on one.
Spectre.
Yeah, which was fun. I mean, to work on a Bond film, that's like always. Like I've always wanted to work on a Bourne film, but I also enjoy watching them so much that I'd hate to be offered one. Mm-hmm. Because then you'd be like, oh, I'm not going to enjoy this. I thought that with Matrix when they offered it to me. I was like, oh, now I'm not going to get to.
It'd be shitting where you eat, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
nice
James Bond film like Casino Royale. That's always good. Skyfall as well. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no. So that was John Lee, and he worked on a few movies you might have heard of: The Dark Knight, The Matrix, Mission Impossible 2, and our film for today, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. Thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Parth, wasn't that a delightful interview? I know I really enjoyed myself. The questions, the answers, where to begin.
I know. Well, those are the two things that there were in this interview. Yeah, no, that was an excellent time. I had a great time.
Good. Yeah, no, it seemed like you had a good time. So, Parth, riddle me this. Do you think I'll like Interstellar?
I think you will like it, but you will have problems that we can get into in our episode for next week.
Yeah, good transition. All I know is that McConaughey cries and that Matt Damon's like kind of there in the end.
Sort of right. Yeah, sure. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, thank you to John Lee so much for talking with us.
And for liking Parth's tweets
and occasionally replying. I agree. We shouldn't have 14 South Park movies.
Wait, there are 14 South Park movies?
We'll get into it off air, Trent.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Thanks if you made it this far, thanks for doing so.
Oh, yeah. You end of the episode, people.
We love you the most.
Yeah, we don't know how many of you there are, but we appreciate your time. Sticking around till the end of the 60 minutes. I don't know how long.
Final countdown.
How long is this episode? I don't know. We are usually around an hour. I don't think that's
40 minutes to an hour.
I think anywhere over an hour is kind of asking a bit much, and I know
we've asked a bit much a few times.
I know we break that rule sometimes, but if it's a good interview, it's a good interview.
All right. So next week you can listen to our Interstellar discussion, and then the week after we're breaking the 1 hour rule, aren't we?
Yes, we're breaking our rule with our Kid Detective interview with writer-director Evan Morgan, who, much like John Lee, was a very nice man. And our show's first director. Not our first writer, because we had screenwriter Dave Cyrus.
Yes. But our first director, which I would say is a pretty big
step.
Milestone for us.
Yeah.
So
we got second unit director. We've had assistant director. We've been heading in this direction. But here we have fully arrived. And it was a good one.
Yeah, I'd agree. So I think that's about it. Remember to go to Apple Podcasts, give us a good review, rate us 5 stars, follow us on Spotify, follow us on all of our social media. We got Twitter, we got Instagram. Those are the 2 that we have.
Yeah. No, but Parth's really not kidding about the if you're at the end of the episode, like the last 30 seconds, if you've come this far, yeah, go to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review, just write a few words, so we'd really appreciate it. Okay.
It really does help.
Okay. It really helps. Like, we would like it if you did that. Please do it. Pretty please. Pretty please. Okay.
All right, bye guys. I gotta catch the Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah, Parth and I just found out we're both going to see Suicide Squad today, and
independently of each other.
We didn't even we didn't even plan it. It just happened. That's nature, baby. Do you think it'll be better than the Suicide Squad? The Suicide Squad?
Can't see how it wouldn't be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Goodbye.